Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the September 24th, 2020 regular governing board meeting. Ms. Tucker, if you could do roll call, please.
Governing board members present. Governing board president, Ms. T. Lambert. Governing board vice president, Mr. Bill Adams. Governing board members, Mr. Aaron Yannicki, Mr. Larry Herrera, and Ms. Nikki Whaley.
All right, thank you very much. If we could have a moment of silence and meditation, and please think about everyone that is going on in this country right now with the unrest and people just being in a very moment of conflict, that we can concentrate and aim to heal ourselves. Thank you. Dr. Stanton, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
Absolutely, Ms. Lambert. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and move on to the adoption of the September 24th, 2020 regular meeting agenda. Before I ask for a motion, I would like everybody to remember our board approved meeting norms and to help us run our meeting through our virtual. I'd also like to take a moment to explain that this meeting is virtual, talked about going back to in person, but we do not have the technology in our boardroom that would allow us to broadcast the board meeting. And we want to be able to have everyone, if we got together and had to follow our CDC and social distancing, we wouldn't be able to have people be able to attend. So I opted to go ahead and keep us virtual for that reason. So if I could have a motion to adopt the regular meeting agenda.
So moved, Mrs. Lambert.
Thank you. And can I have a second, please?
I'll second, Mrs. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Yannicki. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any nays? All right, thank you. If we could have a motion to adopt the September 10th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
So moved, Ms. Lambert.
Thank you. Is that Mr. Adams? I'm sorry, I couldn't tell. Okay, sorry. And who seconded?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Herrera. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And it passes. Thank you. Current events and acknowledgements from governing board members. Is there?
I would like to make an acknowledgement, please.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Whaley.
I mean, as always, I want to acknowledge all of our staff and our families for putting in their best effort, for sharing their feedback and comments, emails with us, letting us know how things are going. So I appreciate that, but I'd also like to acknowledge my husband, Scott Whaley. Tomorrow will be our 16th wedding anniversary. So 20 years together. I've been with him since I've been an adult. So I just wanted to acknowledge him and his support of me in this role.
Congratulations. Thank you. Is there anything else from other board members?
Mrs. Lambert.
Bill Adams.
Yes, Mr. Adams, Mr. Yannicki, I'll recognize first. I heard him first.
Oh,
Ahead,
okay. Thank you, Mrs. Lambert. And I think all of us are so thrilled with our principals who won those awards, the county awards. Christina Acacia and Tricia and Lookout, I'm sorry. And what a great job they've done. And what a time to win awards. I'm sure it's kind of awkward for them. But we appreciate all of our principals and administrators during these difficult times. It's neat when they get surprised with awards. I just wanted to make that acknowledgement. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Adams. Mr. Adams, did you have something?
I do. Sorry.
Okay.
Got to remember to unmute. I just want to also acknowledge the awards that have been given these principals.
Talk about still in his thunder.
I'm sorry.
Shannon, your mic is on.
Okay.
Go ahead,
well,
Mr. Adams.
I will stop with the acknowledgements of the awards being given, and I'll yield to Dr. Stanton. But I also wanted to acknowledge the individuals that are writing to us, as Ms. Whaley just did. They are heartfelt, they are passionate, and I just also would like to say that we are listening and we do hear everything they're saying. So thank you, everybody, for writing. And I also want, on a personal note, I just want to acknowledge the passing of my father-in-law. He was a great man, and so just for the record, just want to mention Doyle Klaus. So I thank you for that courtesy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams, and you have our condolences. Mr. Herrera, is there anything that you would like to?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I just wanted to make a, hang on. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can. Thank you.
So I wanted to make a point that I really love seeing the virtual awards for our students that the teachers put out there, the schools are putting out there. Just absolutely love those. Please keep doing that. It's really heartwarming to see all those kids. I mean, even if behind the computer, and you know, it's interesting the way they've gotten really tech savvy, where they take a picture and then I don't know if they mail it to the child or not, but they stand in front and each school does their own thing. So I really just love that. I just, you know, really it's kind of brings back memories of those classrooms when, you know, while we can't see their faces right up front, we can definitely see them virtually. So I wanted to say thank you to all the teachers and the schools have been doing that. Really appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Herrera. I would like our principals to know that I know Dr. Stanton is going to honor you all, and you do have, you've brought a spotlight of pride for all of us, and we thank you for your hard work and all that you do. I also really want to send a thank you to all our teachers that have been able to do this virtually. It was a lot to learn. You've gone through a lot. The sense of community, the being able to have the outreach and have that personal touch with our students says quite a bit about who you are as an educator and your dedication to your students. So thank you very much for everything that you do. Dr. Stanton.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple of quick updates, and then, of course, we do have a few acknowledgements, and I know Ms. Tucker will be ready on cue. Since our last board meeting, we did have Patriots Day on September 11th, and so I do want to acknowledge, we talked about that, and I think that's just important to remind people of, you know, we take moments of silence and we remember, and again, I know many people were impacted, so just our schools recognize Patriots Day, and I know that our families do as well. Had a chance to also attend virtually the Grand Canyon University Advisory Board. That's a chance for us to meet with the leadership over at Grand Canyon and see ways that we can partner. They are definitely focused on the social emotional needs and finding and retaining educators. And so that's a wonderful partnership that we have with them along the way. Just had a great WDEA board meeting, so I want to thank Sarah and everyone that was able to meet with us. And then Ms. Tucker, if you could put up the first slide. We'll have to have some Washington Elementary background music here. So as Ms. Tucker is bringing up the two pictures, one is what was already recognized is that Maricopa County each year puts up a, yeah, definitely go bigger on that one, Shannon, if you can. So there we go. Has exemplary principles. It's a application process. They also come out, they check on the schools, they do their own, you know, checking on them, and Christina Hollingsworth at Acacia and Tricia Heller-Johnson over at Lookout Mountain were both recognized this year in 2020 Maricopa County Exemplar Principals. And Superintendent Watson came to the office. We all were 6 feet apart and wearing masks, and he recognized them. And it was a surprise. So it was quite fun to see the surprise on both Tricia and Christine. But also today, if you would, Ms. Tucker, we've been waiting with bated breath on this one, but the National Blue Ribbon Award is the highest award public education schools can get from the U.S. Department of Education. And today they announced the schools across the nation, and Lookout Mountain was awarded an exemplar high-performing National Blue Ribbon School for 2020. That is amazing, not only because we're in COVID-19 and that type of thing, but in any given year to be a nationally blue ribbon. It is a national award, whether it's in Maine, Massachusetts, Florida, Washington. And I know that Trish and the team worked super hard. I know that they had to work getting data and doing interviews, and it's just an amazingly process, but what a kudos. I can't say how much and how proud I know you all are, and we are all of the fact that they were able to accomplish a blue ribbon, national blue ribbon. And they will get their virtual ceremony on November 12th or 13th. We don't know yet, but kudos to Lookout Mountain for what a prestigious award. Madam President, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, and thanks to your staff. I can't say enough about our educational leaders in our district. It really is nice to be honored for the great work that they're doing. We're going to go ahead and do public participation. I would like to remind the audience that this is an area where we're able to hear your voice or your letters. They'll be read out. Thank you for sending them in, as Mr. Adams said and Ms. Nikki said about. We have been receiving your emails, and hopefully you've gotten responses from us all, but we're not going to be able to respond, and I just want people to be aware of that. But thank you. Ms. Tucker, do we have public participation?
Madam President, yes, we do have some public participation that I will read to you. The first one we received is from Lance Brace. He would like to address the board. He says, the governing board and Dr. Stanton have failed to create a viable reopening plan which provided for adequate education of WSD students. The board has failed to prioritize student education in this endeavor and has failed to convey an articulate and actionable plan to provide for the educational needs of WSD students. It has become clear that education is not a priority to the board or Dr. Stanton. The only path to correcting this absolute failure of leadership is for the entire board and Dr. Stanton to resign. WSD needs the leadership that will place a high value on education, new leadership who will face challenges rather than simply complaining that change is hard and delaying action to the last minute. Please resign. The next one is from Sherelle. Victoria Sherelle says that she would like to voice her concerns over WESD schools reopening plan too soon. I would like to see the district allow the community to continue reopening and watch the numbers in Maricopa County. I personally fear for my own safety and the safety of my family as I am being forced into a situation where social distancing is not possible. Schools are traditionally a breeding ground for all illnesses. Any immune system we may have built may have been lost due to the months of quarantine. Reading that the board fails 27 students in kinder, 29 in first, 31 in second and third, and 34 in fourth through sixth is still okay during this time of COVID seems to drive home the point that there isn't concern for teachers and their health. I understand the need for students to be in school, but I must now seriously consider my job if my job is worth my life. I hope the board will decide to put the health of their employees, families, and students first and not succumb to outside pressures to rush for reopening. The next one is from Maggie Roby. I would like to know how the board plans to address the unethical practices of one of its members. I find it very unfortunate that I have to find out information about a board member through a news article instead of the board or district addressing the issue. The goal of the board and district should be to communicate with their families and keep them informed. This action of the board member, whether guilty or not, and the lack of communication in the part of all the recent events further diminishes my trust in the district. The next one is from Kathleen Tompkins. I would like to discuss the surveys as they are not correctly outlined in the governing board packets. I also have many of my parents' concerns to vote as well as my own, and I work in the district as a kindergarten teacher. Teachers were not asked our opinions nor given much of an option about what we are to do, especially if new to the district. I feel as though many of the community's voices have not been heard, so I'd like to make sure that they are. The next one is from Carl Hernandez. I am concerned regarding moving towards school reopening too soon, as we have started to see an increased number of cases. I am concerned regarding the choice to move forward with the hybrid model. Right now, students are attending Google's Meets, but are having very limited participation in independent work, less than 10%. The hybrid model leaves 2 days for students to have solely independent work, and I am concerned that with less face time, our students will continue failing even farther behind. I do not support returning to an in-person in any form until it is safe to do so. As someone who has been on school campuses, I continue to see staff not following guidelines. Staff are not wearing face coverings appropriately in common areas. Students in our on-site programs are not following social distancing during transitions and not keeping masks on in classrooms. I would really like to see all staff and students on campus currently modeling recommendations before moving forward and adding additional staff and students to campuses. I am uncomfortable being on my campus now, and I feel really concerned about my physical and mental health if we move forward with reopening in person. The next one is from Sarah Peterson. Thank you for your time. 2 questions. Can you please describe the acknowledgement/disclosure form for families mentioned in the document? Will there also be a form for employees? 2, can you please give some insight into the plan for incoming families/employees in the event of positive cases or outbreaks and what that would look like? Thank you.
Is that
The
it?
next one? No, I have 2. Sorry. I have 2 more. Maggie McMahon. What protective procedures are in place if another teacher or student contracts COVID? Why are we choosing to shake up staffing and students with only 41 days left of the semester? Are you going to ask teachers who have been at school for several years to pack up our rooms, contact parents, plan to teach online, in-person, hybrid for a 2-day span? The only consistency we have here is our staff, teammates, and students. Why would you take that away during such a difficult time? Flu season is upon us. You will see a significant decline in student attendance due to those symptoms being similar to COVID symptoms. Would it be more beneficial to keep students and staff safe during flu season and COVID pandemic and continue virtually until this passes? What about the kids who show any symptom? What is in place for them? Who will be their teacher for the 10 to 14-day leave? Why haven't we heard anything from Dr. Stanton? Why do you feel so uncertain and are unaware of what our positions will be in the coming week? Grade levels, school, teammates, students, administration, will everything change? Why many parents are voicing their concern and seems unaware that they will no longer be at our school and with their current teacher? How will you inform them appropriately when you do not know yourselves? What about families who do not speak English or Spanish? How was the survey conveyed to them? Language barriers. Some temperature devices are inaccurate. How will we remedy this so we have clear knowledge of each student's temperatures when coming to school? The last one is from Maggie Roby. I am against opening schools. The reason behind this is based off of the safety and health of my child, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. As a former employee of the district, I have witnessed the lack of care for my child. I have witnessed the absolute disregard for the safety and well-being of not only my child, but other children within the school and district. I do not feel that the staff are equipped with providing my child with a safe and healthy working environment. The other large issue is I know the change in schools opening would affect my child's stability throughout the day. My child is on a set schedule based off the schedule given by the school. To disrupt that schedule for a 7-year-old is crazy. New classes, new schedule, possibly a new teacher. I feel this creates so much uncertainty for children and such a lack of organization, which is vital. That was the last one, Ms. Lambert.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, and later on in the agenda, when we go over the plan, some of these questions will be answered. Dr. Stanton, I ask you to reach out to the other messages and be able to respond to them.
Yes,
Thank you. We're on to the consent agenda. Is there any item that board members would like to pull? Not hearing any. If I could have a motion to accept the consent agenda's item A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I.
So moved, Ms. Lambert. Bill Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. And a second, please.
I'll second Mrs. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Yannicki. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And I heard all ayes. I'll just ask if there were any nays, just to make sure. Not hearing any, then it passes. So now we are down to our action items discussing the revision of the reopening school plan and laying things out. Dr. Stanton, I will turn this over to you.
And Ms. Tucker, if you could put up to start the PowerPoint that was in the board docs. Board President, members of the board, members of the audience, as we normally start many of our discussions that we have, we have been taking our direction from the health guidelines from the state and county and the governor and the public instruction superintendent. Tonight we are updating our reopening plan. We did this a while ago when we did the first one, and I'd like to go through some highlights of the reopening plan. So Ms. Tucker, if you would, we'll go over to the actual document again for the people in the audience. It's actually in board docs. But if you'll notice, it's been updated as of September 2020 on the first page. If you'll go to the next page, Ms. Tucker, in here we actually describe some of the changes, the surveys we did, things like that. This is the letter from me that actually says at the beginning what I just mentioned about where we're taking our health advice from. If you'll keep going, Ms. Tucker, you'll see the metrics recommendations that we'll be discussing later on in the presentation. Then you'll see for the board and for the public, remember when we originally did the meeting, we had talked way back when about a hybrid, and a lot of you have seen now other schools with the hybrid. At the time, we were thinking initially that with the hybrid, you had to have all students in on-site support. Since that first time we met, we learned that you can limit the number of kids in on-site support, and I had mentioned at the time that having on-site support plus a hybrid at the same time from a logistical standpoint was going to be very difficult. With the advent that we are allowed to limit the number of on-site students so that we can follow CDC guidelines, we brought back the multiple subcommittees that we had coming together, and I'll be showing that in a little bit in the slide. You'll see option 1 is the online distance learning model. This is what we're in now. If you'll keep going, Ms. Tucker. Here is option 2, and tonight we're also going to be showing what a hybrid actually would look like for a 5th grade student, but you'll see some of the talking points of a hybrid model. Ms. Tucker, if you'll go to the 3rd option, thank you. This is our traditional learning model, which most of us, this is what we've been traditionally used to in the WSD. Next, we have the health screening, hand hygiene, face covering, school, campus, and classroom logistics. I also will be discussing our operational document tonight, but this is what has been in here before. I will also note, Ms. Tucker, if you just want to move it back down, under the face coverings, right now we currently have a Executive Order 2020-51, and other municipalities have a face covering requirement for school districts. Next slide, Ms. Tucker. There's the enhanced cleaning, also a basic level of reporting, a response to reporting cases. And again, when we get to our operational document, you'll see actually a nice flow chart on that. And then the restrictions for visitors on our campus. We have our these are actually websites. If you want to just go to page 9 for those that are looking for a summary, there's a summary of option 1, 2, and 3 that we've been talking about. If you could, Ms. Tucker. I think what's important, again, here is our activities and what we'll be having and not be able to have, and then Ms. Horton's area and their communication. Next slide, Ms. Tucker. What I think is important here is you'll notice under multiple sections in our document, we've added the hybrid and traditional learning models, particularly the hybrid. So here, for is an example of curriculum instruction and what we've committed to, whether we're in a traditional or hybrid model. And then you'll see the online distance learning model as well. Next slide, Ms. Tucker, or next page. Mike Kramer and his group has actually updated the custodial and building systems and safety protocols and procedures. We greatly appreciate that, Mike. Next slide, Ms. Tucker. Again, more of the facilities discussion, and then of course, Ms. Thompson, areas of finance and things that we're doing during COVID and our reopening plan. Next slide, Ms. Tucker. Health and wellness, again, a lot of the protocols that, for those of you that got to read our operational document, a lot of those protocols actually came from our reopening plan, and you'll see those there. Next slide, Ms. Tucker. I think what's also important is that when you think of hybrid models, traditional models, and online, you also have to think of other areas. So here's an example of where we had Melissa's team update the hybrid learning models for nutritional services. So there's a lot of facets when you're talking about traditional, hybrid, and online learning. But we did update these depending on what the situation we are in. Finally, very important aspect of Washington Elementary, Dorothy and her team have updated the social emotional needs. We've talked about that now for multiple board meetings, that the social emotional needs of our kids are paramount if we're going to ask them to academically learn. And we are blessed to have 34 social workers in our district that are currently working with their kids virtually. And then again, when the time comes, we're looking forward to them being able to interact face-to-face with our students in an in-person type model. Next one, Ms. Tucker. Justin's area for our staff at our workplace and our protocols. Also, if you look at the operational document, I know Dr. Bailey's going to highlight that a little bit, just how it's designed in the work, but we do have Justin's work in our operational document. And then obviously technology and also transportation. I want to point out, thank you JJ and his team, and also Chris and the instructional technology teams for updating their work in situations of what we would do in a online, hybrid, and traditional models. So we did make the updates for adding the hybrid. You did see a little bit of the metrics there. And so that is the reopening document. I do have more in our PowerPoint if you're okay with that, Madam President.
Sure.
Okay. If you'll hit the next slide, Ms. Tucker. Then for those that filled out the survey and you saw the updated parent survey as of Tuesday, this is actually updated as of Thursday. So we've got about 20,000 students that have responded, or families, I should say, that responded. These are kids, but the families responded. And you can see the current percentages are roughly the same as they were before. Go ahead, Ms. Tucker. If you want to go to the next one. This is each, we were asked, and each individual school is on this one. Again, this was updated as of Thursday. We'll also show you the one that we had of Tuesday. For those of you that look closely, you'll see that in the percent taken column, you'll notice that some of those are over 100, and I'll be addressing that. We do need to call some folks up. One, obviously with 20,000, having roughly 22,000 kids, we're missing some still. And then second, where you can see the over percentage of like 116 at Cactus Wren, some of the kids are at the wrong school based on what information was filled out in the Google form. So we're going to have to do a little bit of cleanup of data. For anybody who's ever done data analysis, cleanup of data happens along the way. So we're going to have to do a little bit of that. I just want you to be aware of that with our data. Then, if you would, Ms. Tucker, here is what everybody saw. So you can see we went from about 18,300 to about 20,000 responses. Again, Ms. Tucker, if you'll hit the next slide. This is what it was originally. And again, this was as of Tuesday. So you can see that the numbers are now, they've changed in various ways. And Ms. Tucker, we're probably gonna have to shrink that one down a little. There we go. In Washington, it's been very important that we get parent and teacher voices, and my team's been working on that. So you'll note that subcommittees had parent and staff representation, not just teachers, classified staff and administrative staff as well. I wanted you to see the subcommittees. We started these in the fourth quarter, and then we kept them going. Our Health and Wellness Committee was headed by Chance Whiteman, our Facilities by Phil Lyles, our Organizational Management by Carol Patterson and Shannon Bonnet, and our Staffing Instruction by Justin Wing and Lori Mora. What I'd like to do, I know that we posted the document, but if we could give Dr. Bailey a chance to show the board the operations and how the operations multiple subcommittees have come together, whether we're in whether we're going to be hybrid or traditional model. So if you would, Dr. Bailey, if you could help step in a little bit and just kind of explain how the document is working and anything you need to highlight.
Thank you, President Lambert, members of the board, and those that are listening, participants, virtually at least. Dr. Stanton stated, these are the final recommendations from the Operations Committee. And on the left, the legend indicates the committees that were meeting. So there was an organizational management committee, a committee that met on facilities, one on health and well-being, one on staffing, and another one on instruction. And so what you see are the topics that they discussed and the recommendations that actually came out of those topics. The recommendations came out of the committees, and of the recommendations for the sites are actually listed in blue. And then if it is a site decision, it is listed in green. So that's the way that the legend, the color indicates whether it's a site decision or a district recommendation coming up from the committees. And also on the column under the topic, if it is in a gray area, that means it's both for a hybrid model and for a traditional model. And our traditional model is what we're considering our in-person, back to our in-person model that we've had for years. So that's what we're considering our traditional model. So let me just give you an example. For instance, the first topic, again, these are all alphabetical. The first topic is A-B schedule. It's not in gray because that is just for one of the areas, which is for the hybrid. And so in the blue area, it indicates that a hybrid model in Washington School District is Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday for face-to-face, and Wednesday would be a distance learning day under a virtual schedule that we're actually currently been doing. Then if you go down to the next topic, that it says Arizona ASA before and after school, that is in gray because that is both for the traditional and for the hybrid model. And that's where the ASA is in 23 sites right now. And whether we're in hybrid or virtual or hybrid or traditional, they will have virtual before and after school classes. So that basically is how the document was actually categorized and put together. This was given to our site administrators as well as our district administrators on Tuesday morning. And then the majority of the staff have actually been working with this on Wednesday PLCs as well as in leadership team meetings. So this is a preparation type of document as schools prepare to come back either in a traditional model or a hybrid model, needless to say, based on our metrics. So it goes all the way from, and if you could go to the next page, Shannon, thank you. It goes from bus pickup, cafeteria areas, also into what does distance learning look like, what are we looking for individual supplies. So it goes all the way alphabetically, all the way to visitors and volunteers on campus. And so going through in particular, also giving the sites some areas to consider as they're preparing. So it's a document that schools, staff members are going to be working on. They've already started working on it beginning yesterday. So that is basically the documentation from the final recommendations from the committees that have been meeting. The last page is actually a screening flow chart for students that was actually provided for us by our 2 nurse supervisors that actually comes out of the Maricopa County Health document. So that is our last document in the in this whole page of recommendations.
May I continue, Mr. Lambert?
Yes, please.
Dr. Bailey, thank you for that kind of overview of the operational document. I know that there were many questions of hybrid and traditional and that type of thing. Next slide, if you would, Ms. Tucker. So I just wanted to share aloud with our community and our board some of the thought processes as we were doing the work that we did. And I do want to say, if everybody recalls, Dr. Bailey has actually, and I have co-facilitated the operational work. We did start obviously in fourth quarter when we had to do this work, and we didn't work with, we got multiple options, and we worked the hybrid model many times. The key with our thought process now is we wanted to survey our parents when benchmarks got close to in-person learning. If you recall, we did survey at the end of June, and of course that data is a little outdated. So we wanted to survey parents as close as to when we saw our in-person learning possibilities come about. We've also been trying to determine when our benchmarks would stabilize, and one of the things, that indicator that we were being told might cause going up, and it did in some places, was Labor Day. Then we do include parents and staff in our subcommittees per our board request, which then, just because of timing, having meetings before and after school, trying to work around schedules, makes it a little longer process. We also, just so you know, in the hybrid, using our assist system, we have to build 3 schedules for the hybrid: an A schedule for A kids, the B schedule, and what they do on early release Wednesdays. And then finally, I want to put down that Maricopa County actually began, you know, it's funny, we're in September 24th, but they actually began publishing the benchmarks only on August 13th, if you recall, and they started using the term hybrid model in their document. Ms. Tucker, if you would go to the next one. This slide, I believe, is, I hope, familiar with everybody. This is the Arizona Department of Health Services document of how they were kind of putting a traditional, hybrid, and virtual schools. You'll see that up at the top there. The term intermittent is what we, you know, kind of the concept of developing a plan for what we call rolling closures. What happens if a school has a situation or an individual department. You'll see at the bottom, I hope everybody's familiar with this one. We've been now showing it for multiple board meetings, but in a traditional model, if and when our metrics get there, what's the district doing? And you can see the different hygiene and mitigation strategies. Then in a hybrid situation, and I think it's important to note that in a hybrid situation, there's a higher degree of mitigation strategies, and you can see them go all the way across on the document there. And then of course, you have your substantial, I do want to note at the bottom, it does mention that at the current time, we still have a mask mandate in place, as I mentioned, from the governor's 2020-51 executive order, as well as multiple municipalities still have the mask or the face covering order in place. Ms. Tucker, if you'll, next slide. So this is the information that we had today. If you'll notice, if you look at the benchmarks at the bottom, 2 weeks ago, we were at cases per 100,000 of 31.45 and percent positivity of 4.11. We shared before the COVID-like illness is a county-wide statistic, and it's remained the same at about 2% for quite a while. Today, on the 24th, our COVID-like illness is at 2%. The percent positivity is at also same 4.11, but our cases per 100,000 went down a little bit to 24.50 from 31.45. And then I have the scenario above that we've been showing since we started looking at these. You may remember Mr. Wing has shown this document, this Excel spreadsheet, but WSD did kind of what I'd call the further breakdown of the benchmarks. And of course, you'll see the ones at the top I just mentioned, but then Justin's been showing each time the minimal and moderate levels. And you'll see that we had under like percent positivity 0 to 1.33, and then you can see it go up. You'll notice under the moderate, under the yellow, if you recall, the county recommends a hybrid from 5% to 7%. So you can see Justin and the team put together like a 5 to 6, and then the 6 to 7, which breaks out under cases of 11 to 32, and then 33, say, to 54. And you can see the stratification that's in there as well. So nothing new, shown it before. I just wanted to put that in there for our discussion. There were some districts that did go up today, but like I say, in our data, you can see where we're at. The benchmarks that we're working with and recommending in the discussion today is, if you notice this, the numbers we showed before would be to look at, consider traditional. You notice it's been 5%. We've heard that forever, under 5% for the PCR. Cases are potentially at below 32, and that's that light yellow section. The hybrid still under 7% with cases at or below 54, which is the darker yellow. By the way, for all of these, you have to hold those for 2 weeks. That's been with Maricopa County and the state since we began doing this work. And then the distance learning still holds at above 10%, more than about 100 cases, and of course 2 consecutive weeks. So again, just for the discussion of what we're doing here. Planning for the future, our recommendation is to WSD now, we believe, based on our trajectory, based on the information, is planning to begin in-person learning after fall break, October 19th, and I'll go into some of that discussion later on. Parents will need to be prepared to return on October 19th. Note, we do have some parents that have selected the distance learning only model through the first semester. I will be sharing with the board that we're going to have, like I mentioned, we're going to have to call some people because we want to make sure the data is accurate, and we still haven't heard from everybody. We will continue to provide updates to our parents every Friday as we obtain any more Maricopa County Health Services metrics each week. But if the benchmarks indicate a traditional model, WSD would then be preparing and become a traditional model on October 19th. If the benchmarks indicate the hybrid model, WSD would be in a hybrid model. And I do want to note something. In an effort to adhere to the CDC guidelines, WSD is working on what we call a true hybrid, where approximately 50% of the kids are on Group A day, and we're about to show you a hybrid example. And then Group B would be 50% on the B days. So we'll show you that in a minute. But the idea is that having less kids on campus if the need be for hybrid. You did see the mitigation strategies I showed earlier of what this county would require us if we were in a hybrid or if we were in a traditional model. Ms. Tucker, if you'll hit the next slide, please. So I was trying to describe it, and then we were asked to show kind of a week in the life, a day in the life of a hybrid. We'll be doing that in just a minute. But Group A students would have an in-person learning on Mondays and Thursdays, self-paced independent work on Tuesdays and Fridays, and live virtual learning on Wednesdays. Wednesdays would still continue to be an early release day. Group B would be your, say, Tuesday, Friday folks, self-paced on Mondays and Thursdays, and live virtual learning with teachers on Wednesdays. Parents will be contacted by the teacher school to let them know. I believe our target date is in early October, so I think the 1st, maybe the 2nd, to contact them to let them know the groups at that time. Ms. Tucker, if you could switch to the other document. Like I said, we were asked to kind of show a week in the life of a hybrid student. So this is an example of, say, a 5th grade student. It might be different depending on the school. So if you notice what Dr. Bailey shared, where some of the schools are working with their leadership teams on the logistics and things like that of their particular school. But you'll notice that school, come to school, we would check temperatures, breakfast in the classroom. Then they would have their day 1 and day 2 lessons for math. You can see English language arts, lunch. Obviously you can see we might use the classroom or the cafeteria. Intervention time, we have been doing virtual intervention. Now we'd be looking at face-to-face, science, indoor social studies, and of course, special areas as well. Then on Tuesday, this would be a Group A student. Notice it says 5th grade Group A. So again, I showed you the A and the B. Tuesday, you would be self-paced assignment that aligned with day 1. So mastery of concepts for day 1 or day 2 in math and English language arts, and some sort of science and social studies also area that they've been either demonstrated mastery or at least been exposed to. On Wednesday, you'll notice the virtual live instruction in math, the day 3 lesson in the ELA day 3, and then some self-paced work with day 3. And I know we're talking about some intervention possibilities as well. And it says science and social studies would also be added in the special areas follow-up on those schedules as well. Ms. Tucker, if you would. On Thursday, again, this is where you're an A student, so Monday, Thursday, back to temperature checks, breakfast in the classroom. Then you'd have your day 4 and day 5 lessons in math and English language arts, lunch in the classroom or cafeteria, again, intervention, and then science and or social studies and your special areas as well. And then on Friday, again, self-paced work that aligns with our day 4 and day 5 lessons in math and English language arts and science and social studies activities along the way. So a 5th grade example of a Group A possible hybrid. Again, we'd have some variation on these based on the schools, their design configuration, et cetera. And as Lynn mentioned, those schools would be working on those models, are working on those models for if and when if we have to go to the hybrid model along the way. If you'll go back, Ms. Tucker, to our slideshow, I think just a couple of things to be aware of. I mentioned that one thing, no matter what we do, we'll have to call families to follow up on missing students or students we don't have their information. We also have people that put in the wrong school. We have some mismatching school names, student names. But we'd be planning for the online work on returning potentially October 19th. That would then mean us also to call people to verify, you're online to the semester. That's what we're saying. And then if you saw the trend today, it's a potential that we could be green. If the trend continued, we could be possibly in a traditional model. So the people where we said hybrid into green and online into green, we would contact to verify that they understand that we could have, two options coming. And so we would follow up with them. A couple of things as I finish up, and then of course we'll take questions from the board. Why the October 19th? It would allow our students to have their teacher for the first quarter, and they would be graded by that teacher when you have the parent-teacher conference, so a single teacher. It would also allow us, if you saw in the operational document, to have a couple of days for our teachers to not only set up their classroom, but work with their schools on actual factual logistics that they need to have for their schools. As you saw, there's a lot of heather gray areas where you're ready, prepared for your hybrid and your face-to-face in your classroom, as well as logistics on the campus. It would also, as I mentioned, let the schools really implement the operational pieces that you saw there. And our sister district, for example, our Glendale Union High School district, we know that many of our families have students both in Glendale Union and our district, and they too are returning after fall break. We've aligned with them with fall break for many, many, many years. So that is the completion of our PowerPoint. If there's our questions, of course, I have my leadership team ready to answer any of them. Thank you, Ms. Lambert, for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Dr. Stanton. I would like to go ahead and Mr. Adams notified me that he has a question. Go ahead, Mr. Adams.
Thank you. First of all, just a quick compliment. This is amazing, the amount of work that's gone into this. So I'm just blown away. Dr. Stan, it is so much information, and even though we've had the information, we've had the documentation before the meeting, and we've all studied it. I'm just curious on the, and forgive me, I'm trying to, where we have, I'm on the wrong, where we have the in-person on Mondays, and then they go to, the second part was at pace, I think. How did you term it, at pace? Bear with me.
Self-paced.
Thank you. So self-paced, can you please give me what is a student, what is that Tuesday self-paced? Tell me what that's about.
So Lynn and Lori, or Lori and Lynn, if one of you want to kind of describe, I know Lori, I think you may start with you, on the self-paced, what that might look like for, say, the day one after you've received your tier 1 instruction on Monday.
Absolutely. Governing board members, thank you for this opportunity to explain that a little bit further. So currently right now our lessons are designed so that there are some activities attached to the lessons. So our teachers meet with the students for about 30 minutes, and then they have some follow-up assignments that the students will be doing. Well, while we have them in person, we're going to focus on the live instruction part of it, where we're actually providing the instruction with the students. So those activities that have been attached with some modifications will then be assigned to the students to complete on their own. So it will support the lesson that they're used to currently, because that's the format we've been using. And so the expectation would be that they would then complete those on their own on that self-paced day. The nice part is the teachers will be able to work with the students and kind of give them some front loading, explain to them what the expectations are, possibly add some additional work that they can continue to work on, and then the students will go with there. Also, our students have been working with some digital platforms that we've offered We have an amazing program called RAS Plus, which our students are working on their reading, and they can do some self-paced activities with that. So we'll have our students engaged in those types of activities as well.
Ms. Moore, are they on campus?
No, on that day that they would be at home. Those would be the home days, and that would allow us then to have the smaller class sizes in person.
And the Group B kids would be there too, right, Ms. Moore? So that would be the 50-50 we're talking about, 50% on Monday and 50% on Tuesday, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And this is being used in other districts too, correct?
I believe, if I recall, Mr. Morris, Rich Morris, Gilbert's using this, and then I know there's a couple other ones, yes, because this is again, Mr. Adams, the idea of getting roughly half the kids on one day and then half the kids on the other. That allows you, if you remember what I showed earlier about the hybrid being that yellow, that gives you a lot of the social distancing and a lot of so you can space kids out at different parts of the day. But that's why, yeah, we're working very hard to keep it at roughly 50-50.
Good job, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Lambert?
Just a minute, Mr. Yannicki, if you could notify me in the chat that you need to speak. I have Mr. Herrera is next.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lambert. I had a question. What happens to the curriculum? First of all, I guess it's a three-part question. What happens to the curriculum? How is it all going to be? I guess graded at the end of the semester. With this, and then what about the electives and like our art teachers? They have to schedule 20 classes at a week, or just seems like quite a bit of scheduling for those folks.
So, Ms. Moore, if you'll come back on, I think I'll help with the beginning of the first one. The grading, and again, another reason why we put October 19th as our projected date is so that a single teacher using their grading system, Mr. Herrera. So you mentioned at the semester, so obviously the second quarter, we don't know if we're going to see changes, meaning, whatever we come back with the metrics may move up or down. Obviously moving down, that's, ideal, but they may move up as well. But Ms. Moore, I don't know if you want to come in or under the idea of the electives, you may want to explain the electives to Mr. Herrera.
Yes, and this is something we're still fleshing out some of the details on. Obviously, the CDC guidelines will play into our special area classes tremendously because many of those, PE, the interactions and what that will look like, art, sharing of materials, and then obviously band and instruments and even vocal, we would have to be cautious there. So we are working on what that will look like exactly. The other piece is now with only having the students in school on alternate days, we're going to have to look at what that scheduling of those special area classes will look like. The subcommittee that met, the Staffing and Instruction Committee, did feel that they would like to have as much of a normal schedule on those in-person days. So as much as possible, we are going to try to offer some sort of special area classes, but we still have quite a bit of details to work out and really trying to flesh out what their schedules may look like once we come back to in-person.
Thank you. Mr. Herrera, anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Whaley, do you have questions?
Yeah, and I don't know when we're going to go through any more things. I think there was a day, like what a typical day would look like. Maybe this was it, but I have a couple questions. My first question is just making sure that I'm looking at this data right and the survey data. The options were virtual through the end of semester, which is December. Hybrid, meaning once we meet the hybrid metrics, we would go into this A/B scenario. Or if you wanted to keep your kid home, you could, but the option to do the A/B thing would be there. Or would you like to stay virtual until we are green and can open traditionally? Those were the three options.
Just one, it did say hybrid into green on the survey. I know it doesn't say it there, but actually the way the question was worded is hybrid into green. So kind of the hybrid, then if and when the metrics showed green, we'd go into that. So just so it was hybrid into green, online until green, or online until the semester. That was the three.
So the way that I read this is 39% want to get back into the classroom at least part-time as soon as we hit those yellow benchmarks. But the majority, 33% plus 28%, want to remain virtual until things are green and we basically bypass hybrid and go straight into traditional, or till the end of semester.
Well, I mean, I can't speak for the people that took the survey, Ms. Whaley, but the hybrid into green and virtual into green, you know, you could look at that and possibly say 68% of the people said once it's green, we'd be wanting to come back. Again, I can't speak for those individuals. The virtual until the end of the semester, that one I think is pretty clear cut. Again, another reason why we want to call people and just say, do you understand hybrid into green and then virtual into benchmarks until green? These are the choices, you know, this is what we asked you. And of course, we're getting close to green. So those two lead to green. And so
what I'm seeing though is only 39% want to come back right now. The rest are willing to wait until it's green or semester is end.
The people that are, yes, the hybrid folks, that would seem to be the interpretation, yes.
So 39% are willing to come back now since the benchmarks are yellow. And that's the way that the question in the survey was. One, if we hit this yellow benchmark, do you want to come back to hybrid? 39% said yes. If we hit that yellow benchmark, I'm ready to come back to school. But the rest of everybody else said no, the yellow's not good enough. I'm going to wait.
Again, I can't speak for the people that took it, but that you know, hybrid into green and virtual.
I'm asking because we have to interpret this data, otherwise it's useless. So I'm trying to figure out what we're taking from this survey. Is I'm trying to see what the common understanding is.
So the plan as we did it at the time of the survey, and also what we're going to be calling folks back at, is we really need to know who's virtual. For you know, Mr. Wing's on here and he's part of the staffing instruction team. We need to know who wanted to go virtual until the end of the semester. That's the first and foremost step. Then, based on the fact that we have an in-person option, in-person being hybrid or face-to-face, then we wanted to get the other folks to then, between that, let us know what they were indicating. That was our intent. So first we had to, for lack of better words, clear out the people that were going to stay virtual until the end of the semester. And then we had two choices to find out what was remaining. As you can see, by the way, the hybrid into green was 40% of the people, and then the virtual until green is 28. So that's the second set of choices that were there. And as we get to green, like I said, we want to call people and make sure they understand that that is where they'd be headed. We would, if we get to the green, they would be in person and they'd be coming back to the district.
Okay, so my next question is the 50-50. So let's imagine that in this hybrid situation, it's 40%, maybe you make some phone calls and we say 50% of the kids want to come back into hybrid. What is the staffing model for that? Because when I looked at the plan, it said that the goal was to get between, was it 12 and 17 or something like that?
15 to 17 students.
15 to 17 students max on a particular day. Yep. So those teachers and the staff would be exposed to 15 to 17 kids one day and then a different 15 to 17 kids the next day, then the virtual, and then they do it again.
Following the CDC guidelines, yeah.
Right. I'm just wondering with I've seen our classrooms. I'm trying to think with 15 kids, how you keep them anywhere close to 6 feet apart. I don't know how that's physically possible. Did you guys measure that out, or are you going to have some kind of dividers or something? I'm just trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I don't think Mike's on there, but Mike's been a part of our operational committee, and he actually did go out and do all the work you just described. Because we do know some campuses, a 30 by 30 classroom is different than a 20 by 20. So he did measure and did do the analysis of how many kids can you get into a classroom to try to keep this 6 feet of distancing.
Okay, so we are going to put a max on each individual classroom based on how much that we can get in there and still keep them 6 feet apart?
We are, yeah, he's spaced out everything, and that's what those, if you saw what the operational plan said, Ms. Whaley, the school's going to be working on that exactly to make sure that's there, because it's one thing to do it when he goes out there. Now it's time to do it with the actual full staff. So yes, they are actually looking at each of the classrooms.
So assuming we get only 50% of the kids are there, they're in a classroom where they're 6 feet apart, they're all wearing their masks. They had to get into the class. Is the idea that we test their temperature in the classroom or before they get to the classroom?
They would test in their homerooms.
So second question, do we have however many hundreds of thermometers, so every teacher has their own thermometer to do that?
Every homeroom teacher will have a thermometer.
Homeroom, but is that every teacher? Because my understanding is there's some campuses that only have like 7 of.
Sorry, Miss Lambert.
I was kicked out of the meeting, so I'm still here though.
Okay.
Good.
Sorry about that.
And I will just make sure that we don't keep doing this. Otherwise, I'll ask for a recess, Miss Lambert, if it happens again. So my understanding is that as people are starting to rule this out, that we don't necessarily have enough for every classroom teacher. Are you saying every classroom teacher has access to one of these no-touch thermometers? There's no sharing. Everybody has their own for their classroom, so they can do it as soon as the kids get in the classroom.
Well, every kid has a homeroom, and that's where they typically would start. So we're going to be using the thermometer at the starting point. That's
Okay.
at the end of the
So
day.
every single homeroom teacher has their own touch-free.
Ms. Lambert, I think we already covered that already. Paul covered that in his last 3 updates. He's already covered that.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
would
Herrera.
like to
We'll
continue.
allow Nikki to
That already. I
continue.
think we are kind of going over the same things.
So I have every right to be clear on the matters, so I will continue with my questioning. Thank you. The next thing is the staffing model, and this is probably going to be a question for Justin. Looking at the sheet that we gave me, I saw the priorities. So in terms of who will become a virtual teacher, somebody that's going to be allowed to stay at home and teach virtually while other teachers are going to be doing the hybrid model. The first priority is, of course, those that have conditions and they've been asked to reach out if they have any kind of concerns about healthcare issues. And then the second are for people that have certifications in Google where they're particularly well-versed in working online. But then we get down to the seniority folks, and I'm just wondering, it seems as if, and I did pose this question to the team earlier before the meeting, but it seems as if it's indicating that this is going to be on a district-wide basis. So my question is, if there is a particular school that has a lot of senior teachers and some people with health waivers, is there a scenario wherein a teacher will be asked to come back in person at a different campus than they currently are at?
Mr. Wing.
Sure. Good evening, Governing Board, Superintendent. Just to clarify, the first priority is those with that may be pursuing potential disability accommodations.
Right.
Just to clarify on that one. When all else is equal, no ADA accommodations, no Google certification that's straight from actual Google. Seniority would be when all else is equal, we're going to be using seniority. Yes, it is possible where we're going to have teachers that have to move and transfer to other schools. But not only because of that, it's also going to be based on the eventual overall outcomes of parents who want to go the distance learning through the rest of the semester versus returning, which, in this case with this recommendation, October 19th, per grade level, per school. It also depends on those that we have to accommodate. We may have, I don't know if this is going to be the scenario, but I'm going to pretend we may have 2 teachers in one grade level where we have to comply with the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act, provide them a temporary reasonable accommodation. Now they're virtual teaching, but that's going to leave a position vacant at that school where that grade level may not have that many students wanting to be distance learning for the semester, and vice versa at another school. So there is possibilities of transfers, and it's your question was only one example, but there are many more scenarios in which that could play.
So there's lots of scenarios wherein a teacher may be reassigned to a different school.
Yep.
And there's multiple scenarios where they may not be able to be a virtual teacher even if they want to.
Quite possibly.
Okay.
If you have 200 teachers who want to be distance learning teachers, But based on the number of students who want to be distance learning, we only need 100. We're selecting 100 of that 200 pool.
Okay. And why isn't it not school by school? So say Washington has the most senior teacher there is 5 years, 6 years, and I'm just making that number up. It's not the most senior person there that would get priority. It's the most senior person in the district.
Correct. Even
So
with
the priority is not to keep a teacher in their home school. The priority is to give it to the seniority.
To begin with, the employer's Washington Elementary School District, not the school. So when we consider like ADA accommodation request, we have to meet the federal. I'm going on the first priority first. We have to meet the employer obligations under that federal.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
But for seniority, yes, we did as a committee recommend that we use district seniority as when all else is equal.
Okay, it just seems to me that it's just more possibilities to moving somebody, that kids are going to get a different teacher, and teachers may have to move classrooms to prioritize seniority and district wide, and that some of our schools that have more turnover are going to be the schools that are going to be most impacted. Potentially. So, okay. I'm just trying to figure out how that's going to play out. I'm trying to figure out how many disruptions are possible in this hybrid model, because we kind of just got things going. People got their classes, things are getting normal, and I just want to know how much potential disruption might happen with trying to do a hybrid that could potentially go right back to virtual.
Just
in a minute. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mrs. Whaley. For interrupting. I just wanted on the transition to going back to the classroom, and this recommendation, we'll just use that October 19th as an example. Regardless if it's hybrid or if it's traditional, the scenario, the equations will remain the same. So, for example, if I'm assigning teacher A 24 kids, planning on coming back on the 19th traditional, and something happens with our metrics, and now we're yellow, and we're going to have to go with the AB model first. Those 24 students would then split 12-12. The change is we're committed to providing families distance learning for the rest of the semester, actually the rest of the year, but at least through the rest of the semester. So we have to account for them. The traditional and the hybrid, once we assign the students, if there are any changes to that teacher, if that's necessary, that will be in place whether we're in person or hybrid or hopefully our metrics throughout the Maricopa County and our school boundaries or whatever doesn't change all the time or fluctuate. But at that point in time, starting the second quarter, you're more likely to keep your students that you're assigned at that time, possibly even for the rest of the year.
So just one last question then. If you're a parent that chooses to go virtual until green, and we approve a hybrid model tonight where kids are, it's still yellow, but kids are, say by October 19th, we're still on the yellow, we go forward with a hybrid model, and then by the end of the semester, we get to green, will those kids that were virtual that get to go back to the teacher, because the hybrid people, that makes sense, that if they're in a hybrid, they'll just condense the hybrid and now you're in a traditional with the same teacher. What happens to those people that select to be virtual to start? Do they stay with whoever their virtual teacher was?
Just to clarify the recommendation is to transition back to the school starting right after fall break, after the first quarter, which happens to be October 19th. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, the student is either a distance learning teacher, a distance learning student for the rest of the semester, or they're returned to the classroom. And what model, whether it's traditional, the green, or the hybrid yellow, is going to be, it's probably going to be determined based on our October numbers next week and the week after or whatnot. So those who prefer hybrid, but we're green on October 19th, we'll come back in person every day. Those who prefer waiting till we're green only, but we are in the hybrid model, they would be returning at that point as well.
Okay.
So your question, it wouldn't really apply because those students would be on campus as well. There wouldn't be waiting.
Okay. I do have other questions, but I know my fellow board members do too, so I will yield and see if they don't ask the same questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yannicki.
Thank you. There's no seniority on the governing board, so that's the good news. The public can recognize that. And those were fair and good questions. My observation is just that this is a living, breathing document. You know, when I teach students about how to write a business plan, there's the frustrating part of this whole thing, I think, for everybody, Mrs. Whaley and everybody on the board and the public with whom we get emails from, is that it's fluid and there's just situations that change and contingencies that need to change. And so I agree with Mrs. Whaley in terms of you can't look purely just at these numbers, but you are going to look at context with respect to those phone calls. So what did you think that virtual until benchmarks are met means and those types of things? But I think in general, I think it's a good fleshed out plan. And I want to commend the people who did that work and the committee that did that work. And I would caution us just to be careful because you can have a great plan and there are always going to be contingencies. There are going to be situations we didn't think of with this that the committee didn't think of. And I just want to caution the public and I want to caution the board and everybody that we have to just understand there will be new things because we don't know what's going to happen in October or November. And so I don't know if there's anything, I don't know if I missed anything, but I feel like we're in a better place. Everybody I've talked to wants them back. I mean, I haven't talked to anybody I know personally who doesn't want them back in some capacity. And that's not just in this district, that's Peoria, Glendale, all these people I know living here as long as I have. They want some sense of normalcy. So I'm hopeful we're getting to that point, and now we're giving people some dates to look at. And by the way, business plans, that's what I was getting to. A business plan, you're looking for predictability. The problem we have in many aspects right now is we don't have predictability. You know, we don't with respect to funding, we don't with respect to our student count. And so when we get some more predictability, I think people will understand what we're trying to do. I don't know. And you can respond if you wish. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Ms. Yannicki, yeah, the issue of using metrics and using health metrics is that they are unpredictable. It's absolutely true. And that's why we've been trying to watch them. If you saw in my presentation, we said we wanted to see if we could clear those Labor Day numbers. And now we have. And so, but again, as you can see, as you listen to when these numbers come out, they can change, and districts have gone up as of today. We were fortunate to see our PCR stay the same, but our cases go down. So yeah, predictability is tough to do in an unpredictable environment.
All right, Mr. Yannicki, is that it?
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Herrera.
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind, I think the vote tonight is to give the superintendent the authority to control, modify the current plan. Paul, if it's not voted to give you more the additional authority, what's going to be the plan? We vote this down. I guess my question is, if you vote it down, are you going to continue on with your previous the authority that we gave you back on a few months ago?
Well, the current authority, Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience, the current authority is there. The actual motion is to accept the revision to the WSD Return to Learn plan, and then also authorize the superintendent to modify and adjust. that currently is in place, the modification adjustment, that was in the last recommendation when we did the first one. So this is to approve the revision, and then that disclaimer is still in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a statement and I'd like to ask some questions. So I ask for a little forgiveness here. Since I have been answering so many emails, just as my fellow board members have received, this is a very emotional topic. And the one thing I'm most proud about what we're doing in Washington is that we are following data. We're doing this based on science, following data, having the health and safety of our students and our staff foremost in our decision making. But in saying that, and just hearing the comments tonight and hearing the comments in the past, it's very divided. People really want to be able to feel like they could get some of their life back. And some of my, and so I'm really pleased that the way we're approaching this is, I guess, where I'm headed with that. I have a few questions on how will October 19th look for preschool students?
Lynn, I think I might, or Lori, but I'll start with Lynn, because is that you with the preschool?
Or Dr. Koba's online as well.
Oh, Jean's here. I forgot. Jean's here. Thank you. Dr. Koba, you want to help with the preschool question? We just have to get her to unmute. Jean, you there? Maybe I could get her on the phone.
Yeah, it looks like her microphone is off, but we're not hearing her. So.
Give me 1 second, please. Gene, I'm going to put, are you there? Can you say it again, Gene?
I got it fixed.
Got
Can
it.
you hear me?
You're on. You're on. You're good. Go.
I don't know why this has been hard this evening. Madam President, members of the board. So our preschoolers our special education preschoolers at least, would start back the same as the district would. We are looking at the hybrid because our numbers are so small comparatively to a general ed class. We are looking at if there's a possibility that if we went back hybrid, we could preschoolers, since also they're not in school very much time, 4 days a week and a couple hours a day on each of those days. So we are exploring the possibility of that, but we of course have to watch the guidelines and make sure our class sizes would be small enough, with the adults also counted in that count to be sure they're under the number to keep it safe for our kids and for our staff.
Okay, thank you. When for the special areas, I noticed in the hybrid that they're only going to be, there's 3 special areas, but yet we're having just 2 days to allocate that. Will that be a site decision on how that rotation happens for those students?
Maybe a split question. Is it Lynn or Lori on that one?
I'm just going to keep you hopping all over the place.
I'll go, and Lori could probably also with that. Yes, it will be a site decision. So it's took me longer to get online than to actually give you the answer. Sorry, Madam President, to tell you the truth. Yes, it is going to be a site decision, and Madam President and members of the board, that's one of the things that that are in the planning stages with the staff right now, and looking at their schedule and how they can accommodate, and especially with the really getting at special areas where we haven't had a lot with special areas. I mean, we've been able to do it, but only virtually. So really looking at that special areas and how we can accommodate in that type of mode. So yes, site decision.
Okay, thank you. And the one thing that I didn't hear, but it's my understanding, so I just want to make sure that I am understanding this correctly. So when we go back to hybrid, and there's 40% of our families currently that want to do it, it may grow after you do some more researching. If a teacher's class is normally, we'll just say 30 because it's a round number, if only 40% of those 30 are coming back to school, then that group is split into half. So their class size may even be just 10 or 12 kids a day with each cohort group, with the other portion being virtual. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience, if we are able to get the distance learning for the semester folks corrected and make sure those kids are in that area, like I mentioned earlier, that was the first criteria, then yes, the kids that would be returning would be split 50-50. So in a classroom of, say, 24, you'd have 12 on one day, 12 on the other, or whatever the 40% would end up being. Yeah, I mean, with 40% of a school class of 24, what are you talking about? 50% would be 12. So, potentially 10 split or 11 split, that type of thing. So that's why we want to get this very clear. But potentially you could have small class sizes in that hybrid AB model. And also get the 6-foot distancing, as you correctly identify, Ms. Lambert, that once we're able to get the distance learners out, that would make them smaller classes, yes.
Okay, and if we were fortunate to keep the numbers going down and life is treating us well, and we were able to do, come back to the green and go back into in-person teaching, will we still be offering virtual?
Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience, many months ago, we did make the commitment to stick to virtual. We are going to ask at the semester break because we know, as you just described, if our metrics keep going down, there may be families that originally weren't compromised but just had a different reason for doing it, so we'll give them a chance. But yes, we would remain virtual in the second semester for those that had that wish.
Okay, and with the worry about disruption of classes, even if we went, we would run into a problem with going a full face-to-face plus virtual, because we're still going to have teachers that can only or should only be teaching virtual, and so that we still could have those kinds of things. I know that I had asked you before, that is one of the criteria that we're also using, is to also preserve the classroom and its makeup as much as we can. It's not like everybody will have end up having a new teacher.
Justin, you want to respond?
Sure. Certainly the ultimate goal is to maintain the same teacher even now transitioning back in, but based on the elections for the students, it's unlikely that it's going to be 100%. It won't be 100%. If I have teacher A is coming back to school to teach, but I'm going to be virtual until the end of the semester, I'm going to be assigned a different teacher, or vice versa. My teacher has an accommodation, a disability accommodation. He or she will be a virtual teacher, but I'm coming back at school, I'm going to have a different teacher. So there's a lot of possibilities of some changes. Obviously, I'm not going to move, or we're not going to move that child from this classroom to this classroom just because if they're coming on campus and it works out well, our intent is to keep the same. I do have some maybe silly visuals if you guys wanted to entertain on different scenarios and possibilities, but you're talking hundreds of, our committee has looked at hundreds of scenarios, and a decision of 5 students can make a difference on staffing and transitions throughout that grade level.
Thank you. Because this is in some regards, it's kind of like if a teacher had to take a medical leave and we ended up with a long-term sub. So there would be that kind of scenario that goes on with kiddos ending up with different teachers. I think one of the biggest issues, and this is a comment, not really a question, is that everybody wants a sure answer, and we're living in unsure times. And I have heard everybody to stomping their feet saying, I want everything back to normal. Just get me back to school and be back to normal. And others that are concerned about every little piece of it and just worrying, because that's kind of where we are. We're just worrying. I think the one thing that for myself that I had to come to realization is that we're living in very unsure times, and we need to make the best decisions that we can for the education for our kids, and keeping in mind the health and the safety of our students and our staff. It's a very difficult thing. I appreciate the hard work and everything that you have gone into this, and I know staff has as many questions, but it's a lot of things you're still building as we move into the next 3 weeks, depending on no matter what we do. The only way not to do anything different is to stay virtual for the whole year. And there is enough folks, that teachers as well as families, that really are wanting to be able to come back and say something virtually. I mean, not virtually, but to be able to get back into in-face person teaching. Yes, Dr. Stanton.
Madam President, members of the board, and members of the audience, just for clarity, we have been building it. It's now actually implementing the kids into the system. We've been working scenarios, as Justin just mentioned, hundreds of them in the staffing instruction. I know in the operations, we've worked probably hundreds as well. The key is now when you get to the point where you've gotten your survey information, first you want it to be accurate, but then you place the kids. And that's what's taking the time now, is to do the actual, placement of the kids into our systems. Is where, so it's not, we've had these hybrid models thought out. We've been talking about these. We had 9 originally as we talked. Now we got to start placing kids so that we can get the staffing, so we can work out the logistics. And that's what it's taking the time. It's not an perfectly automated system. You have to do some manual entry and things like that. And that's just part of the process of doing this.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and Mr. Adams, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, well, you know what? I just got a couple of observations. Over the last couple of weeks, if we were going to go to market with a new product, and you would have put like R&D capital behind it and try to come up with a strong product. This came upon us 6 months ago. COVID, am I close? 6 months ago? And granted, we had an educational model that was recognized and utilized for 100 years and always grew and matured. We're literally trying to, from scratch, create a program utilizing technology and products that are new to us, and that are new to our personnel, that are new to our parents, that are new to our children. So again, I always use the analogy of trying to turn a ship. It just doesn't happen logistically. This is an army. I am so proud of everybody in regards to the amount of work, the amount of due diligence. No matter this, and these are things that are always said. As we look at all the emails that we receive, all the passion behind whatever position they may be in. Yes, I want to go back into the classroom. No, I do not. Whether that be the child or whether that be the staff, it's still very, very difficult. I think that in such a short period of time, a tremendous amount of planning has been put forth by hundreds of people within our organization. I believe we have 20,000 families. Is that correct, Dr. Stanton, that responded to our survey?
20,000 responses, 15,000 families.
Still, okay, 15,000 families. That's still an elephant. That's very, very, very large. So, and I'm trying to get my arms around everything that's being said. I really appreciate, if I may, my fellow board members in their comments that they're making. I think they're very intelligent. I wish we could read all the emails that we received because they were also very, very intelligent. And I want to thank everybody that's written because not once did anybody attack any of us. It was all very maturely, very professionally written. And unfortunately, in some situations, we can and can't answer. But getting back to where we're taking this big engine, we're not going to, there's no possible way to make everybody happy. It's just not going to happen. What I appreciate is the efforts to accommodate everyone. I've never seen anything like it. I don't, you know, I've got family members in some large employers here in the state, and they've got everybody staying home. Period. Until I think Honeywell is one of them. They've got a number of their people. In fact, the majority of their people are working from home now. Period. Till the end of the year, whether they want to or not. And forgive me, I'm using Honeywell because that's one that I heard recently. I just think that everybody involved is doing everything humanly possible to accommodate every scenario that's out there. And there are going to be holes. This is going to be like Swiss cheese. You're adapting to everything that comes before you. And I'm just so proud. And it's about the, you know, I can go down the list of things I've written down, listening to my fellow board members, and also to the administration as they respond to my fellow board members. It blows me away how talented or how strong the questions are, and how good the answers are. But the due diligence, the customer service, the accommodations, the planning involved, and I'm repeating myself, so forgive me. I'll cut it short. There's a lot of information in front of us right now, in trying to just process it. It's not an easy thing even to take all this information in. So I would ask that we continue to be transparent as much as possible. I wish you all the very best at answering all the parents' questions as they come before you, and all the teachers, because they're looking at this going like scratching their head too. So you have a big learning curve continuing. I'm just very proud of everybody. And again, I thank all those individuals that wrote to us because they were very, very helpful for us. Thank you all. And that's the statement I have, Mrs. Lambert. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Ms. Whaley.
Hi. Thank you, Ms. Lambert. As always, I love to hear what my fellow board members have to say and some of the different perspectives. I appreciate, you know, I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I'm somebody that does like to look at data. So data is collected so that you can begin to ask additional questions and try to wrap your mind around it. And so I ask a lot of questions, especially when there's data. I'll have more questions to ask because I really do want to make informed decisions. I do appreciate, Ms. Lambert, you pointing out that, say, of a 30-person classroom, 15, if half want to come back to a hybrid model, and we split those people in half, we're talking about 7 or 8 kids in the classroom. So that does sound a lot more doable. However, I think Aaron or Mr. Yannicki put forth an important thing, which is this is a great plan. I think our district has done, and I know they have done a tremendous amount of work, working 16-hour days, working weekends. We have committee people. There's not a doubt in my mind that these people are not working their tails off to create the best plan they possibly can with the fact that there is so many unknowns. That's not a doubt in my mind, and I think this plan is a good plan. It's the best plan I think that people can really expect, given that there's so many things up in the air. With that, I will say that there are still way too many things up in the air, and there is too many questions that cannot be answered. There's too many what ifs. We've seen today another high school that opened up 2 weeks ago is now in shutdown because they have an outbreak. Higley out in Chandler, we had another one in Queen Creek. They opened up 2 weeks ago. They're already closing down because they've had outbreaks, and they had numbers that were like what we're seeing now. So my concern is that this could go either way in a couple of weeks. And this AB plan, this hybrid model, is a Herculean effort to try to organize and coordinate kids coming, kids going. It puts a tremendous amount of burden on our teachers, who will then have to not only manage their classrooms, but manage health and safety issues. We do not have money for additional aides. I know we've gotten the question, well, why can't we just record the in-person teacher and live stream that to people? Well, that would require us to have very fancy technology in every single one of our classrooms, and we just don't have that. So that's not really an option. We can't just put the laptop in the back of the room and hope that the picture's good enough to engage the kids at home. So that, I mean, I know we've all been thinking through all these different scenarios. And so my biggest concern is that with the fact that we don't know if we're going to get an outbreak 2 days in or 2 weeks in, that we don't know what's going to happen in terms of how many kids are going to get shuffled, how many teachers we're going to have here, how many people are going to get disruption. There's just so many unknowns, and it just seems like for something that we could probably just take some of that uncertainty out and just say, okay, like, let's wait until we can just open traditional. Because if we then have a true choice between I want my kid to be in class or I want my kid to be virtual, and we don't have all the shuffling, we don't have the loss of teachers, we don't have as many of those things, and we also are more likely to keep people safe, because I really, just with those other schools, ASU, just every day you're hearing more schools that have opened up and then immediately are looking to shut down again because this thing is out there, even with the numbers being on the decline. And I think that that's unfair to our teachers to have to bounce back and forth. And I think it's unfair to our families to have to bounce back and forth of, you know, getting ready to go back in person and then coming back again. And as much as I think that families have a choice, you know, if they want to take calculated risks, that's, you know, their right. We as a board also have to make decisions for staff that don't get a choice. They're not making a calculated risk. They're going, unless they have a, you know, a precondition or, you know, happen to have seniority, they're going to be told this is what you're going to do. And I know that when we hire them as a district, they could go anywhere in the district, but we also know that they interview for particular schools. They get into a school, they have certain climates, and nobody really wants to be picked up and moved to a company across town just because technically their employer can do that. So I think that for me, I just don't see this hybrid has too many possible scenarios that we don't know, that we won't know until we get into it. And those uncertainties have potentially life-threatening consequences. I just don't see how we can, with any kind of certainty, say we can keep your kids safe 2 days a week, and that we're going to be able to do that for the foreseeable future and not have to turn around in 2 weeks and say, just kidding. And I don't know how we can tell our staff, I know you need to be there 5 days a week, because they're still going to get the full brunt of however many kids are on that campus, even if they only see them at 6 or 7 at a time. So I don't know, I'm just having a really hard time feeling confident that a hybrid model will be able to be executed in a way that will be more beneficial and keep our people safe, because nobody's discussed it so far, but our hybrid model requires you to be without any kind of contact with a teacher 2 days a week. So if you're a kindergarten teacher or kindergarten student, you have a class one day, the next day you're on your own with whatever you're doing. You don't even have a virtual connection until Wednesday. And then you get a day with your class, and then you're on your own again with, you know, your parent or whoever's at home, or if you come to on-site support. That's a lot of time to just be on your own with no interaction with an educator. At least in the current virtual model, you have face-to-face check-in, then you have some independent study, then you have face-to-face check-in. You're not left alone for a full day to your own devices, or your poor parents, you know, trying to figure out what to do and manage your time for the day. So I don't know. I forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm just not seeing how we can say that this is going to be an excellent transition into hybrid and that it's worth the upheaval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whaley. And I don't disagree with your fears, but unless we house everybody day and night, 24 hours, and no outside forces, we will never be able to keep our community safe. We only have them for 6 hours a day. After that, they're out in the world and have exposure. We don't know that students in these other schools got COVID in the school. it was just a community event that happened. So, but I understand your concerns and your worries, and that's not to diminish them, but I've been arguing myself. I think all board members have probably been taking this back and forth, trying to decide the best that we can do in what we're doing. So I do appreciate your comments. Everybody is in the same turmoil of trying to figure out what is the best way to move forward. And all we can do is make a decision in our hearts of what is going to be good. Because even if we go green, until 70% of the United States is vaccinated, and who knows will that be, we're always going to have this fear over our head. That's just the way that it is, and it can flare up and it can die down. And that is probably, to me, one of the hardest things of what is going on right now. And some of the emails I get are very even of who wants to come back to school. I've been threatened with recall. I have been, people are upset if we do, people are upset if we don't. So the best thing is that we make the best decision that we can as individually as what we think is going on. Board members, is there anyone else who has a question or make a comment?
Just a comment.
Okay, Mr. Herrera.
Wanted just to say that, this information, it's obviously nobody knows, what nobody can tell the future, but, I hear us going back and forth from, hey, we need a date to, hey, it's too risky. But I think the main thing is for the community to understand and hear what's actually going to happen tonight is we're actually going to vote on giving the superintendent authority to to amend and change the back to school reopening plan as he sees fit. So that's kind of one of the things that came up last time where board members didn't understand what the vote was, but the vote is tonight is to give, again, the superintendent the authority to reopen, basically put in motion the plan to reopen the schools. If something happens before October 19th, obviously, Paul's going to say, wait a minute, let's put the brakes on it. We're going to change it. But this is something that we move forward with. Nobody knows, nobody can tell the future, and this is at least a plan that is solid, is what the information we have at hand, and that's all we can do. It's similar to what any other plan we make in our lives, in our personal and professional lives. Do we buy this house here? Do we buy this house here? Well, we don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. Do I take this job? Do I move here? Do I move to this state? Nobody knows that. And I think the best thing we can do is make decisions with science-based facts, and what we're doing now. That's all we can do. And I think that any other decision besides that would be not to trust our staff, not to be in coordination of our superintendent, and to make not to and to basically be in the way, so to speak, to progress and to make sure that he leads us, steers us through the headwaters of this pandemic. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, Paul. I don't think that you get that a lot, but just wanted to say that publicly. I do appreciate that. Of course, there's some things that I don't agree with on this, but I think for as a person of science, I think that what I see and data that I've seen is definitely something that should move forward. So with that, thank you very much, Ms. Lambert.
Thank you, Dr. Stanton.
Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience, Ms. Tucker, if you could put it to the slide that has the kind of the discussion of October 19th towards the end. I did have her put that slide up just because of the mitigation circumstance. That's it, Ms. Tucker, you got it. The strategies that we are meeting under the CDC guidelines with a hybrid, that's for everybody to see. And then per ADHS, and then if we come back face to face, the strategies, the mitigation strategies. But I just want to say that with tonight, depending what the board vote, we're planning to then have students return on the 19th. If we have the green data, for lack of better words, the in-person, because then we have the in-person metrics that show that, then we would be bringing them back in a traditional model. If our metrics are the hybrid model, then we would be giving them the hybrid model. We do want parents to know that we're going to be coming back on the 19th because all of our indicators appear that way. And if you remember from Maricopa County, they say to watch for 2 weeks your metrics anyway. So we could get to the point where we can be looking 2 weeks out and then say to our parents, this is what we have data-wise. And then we'd be saying that. No, but as has been discussed here, we would like predictability too, but this is a very unpredictable situation. As I mentioned today, some districts' data went up. Ours happened to stay the same for our PCR, and it dropped for our cases. Looking at trend, it appears that that may be the case going forward in the future, unless something changes in the environment. So our plan is to call parents and let them know we're coming back on the 19th, that, as Justin mentioned earlier, that they would be got to nail down absolutely the online to semester folks, and then we'd be working with the other people, hybrid to green and online to green, to say we're getting real close to green, so we need you to make a decision on what you're going to do. Is it going to be what we're heading towards? So that's what we're going to be doing, in the, depending on what the board decides tonight. I just want to make that clear. I wish I could tell you I do exactly on October 19th, but I think on next data point comes out October 1st. Obviously, if it goes in one direction, we'd be able to share quite a bit of information. If it goes in another, we go the other way. But by the first, we really want to start looking at the data. I mean, we're already looking at the data and saying, hey, we think this is where we're headed, so be ready for this trend. And then, of course, if on the 8th and the 15th it stays in that direction, we are there. If it went in a different direction, we would just communicate that. I mean, being honest and with people is what we're trying to do. I appreciate also this governing board being focused, as you've all discussed, about metrics and those types of information. It's been helpful to help my team. But again, I wanted you to see that there. Based on the vote tonight, we will be informing people on the 19th. We'll be in person. The question will be in what model, so parents can start to prepare, so that our schools can start to prepare, and so that we can be ready for that. And I will say many districts are using after their fall break as an opportunity to transition. Looking forward. So again, Mrs. Lambert, I appreciate your time and opportunity to mention that.
Dr. Stanton, I mean, we're talking positively here as things are getting better, but if we find over the next 3 weeks that, I don't even want to say it out loud, but if the numbers change towards a downhill trend, then we would notify folks that it's not looking good. We're going to stay virtual until the numbers look better. Is that correct?
Madam President, members of the board, we have 3 scenarios that we are ready for. That is correct. We have a hybrid model that we discussed tonight, the AB model, using about 50% of the kids that choose the hybrid to be here, and then 50% on the other day. That gives us the chance to follow the CDC guidelines. So if we went in that direction, we'd be ready. If, of course, we did go in the direction where we got above 10% again, like we are now, we are prepared for that as well. So yes, we are prepared for the 3 scenarios of face-to-face traditional or hybrid or virtual. That's why this team's worked so hard, because we've got to be ready for all 3.
And the other thing we've focused on, and I so appreciate this, for social and emotional for our students and helping them go through this and working with families to make sure their needs are met, because they're struggling with things that are food insecurities, they've lost their job, or they've had to take another one that isn't paying as well, and they're going through financial insecurities. What kind of supports do we have in place for our staff?
So maybe let Ms. Moore piggyback, but we just had this conversation with our WDA beforehand. First off, we do have supports for our staff. We not only have our EAP, but we also have social workers at almost every school to help refer them and help them, our own staff first. And I'm just saying that because that was the first question I received tonight. But for our students, our social workers have been working with our kids virtually already. Some have made home visits, keeping the social distance, etc. But they've been keeping track of the kids that are in trauma, the kids that are in need right now. Dorothy's team's done an exemplary job with that. And our schools have done an amazing job referring kids. When you have a class and you're doing your tier 1 instruction and you're able to see a need, you're able to then help refer a kid. All of us have been trained to look for certain circumstances as best we can. We've also been trained in various preventions. So our team's done a yeoman's job, although as was stated with our association today, virtual social emotional delivery is much different than face-to-face, and we know that. So we're prepared, Ms. Lambert, and to the board and the community to help our kids through this process and their families And then also, when they get back, the first thing we'll be focusing on is their social emotional needs, because we know they're going to be coming with needs. You can't teach academics until you address the social emotional needs of students. Ms. Mora, anything else to add to that?
No, I would just echo that. And I think the thing we talked about too is we've never been through this before. This is the first time for all of us, and we don't know what to expect. Emotions could be varied. We'll have some students that will be so excited to be back, and then those that are scared, or those that are unsure. And then our staff members, the very same thing. It's been a long few, months, and so we just don't know what to expect. I think, we've echoed in all of our meetings to our administrators to keep checking on each other, and that's just a practice that's going to have to continue. And our social workers there to support. I think all that we can do to help support our teachers to continue with the lessons that we're providing, and easing up on some of those expectations will continue to be extremely important. And then I don't know if Mr. Wing wants to say anything about our wellness committee and group, because they've been offering some really diverse opportunities, and I'll let him talk about that if he'd like. Things that our staff can participate in. So, Justin, I don't know if you want to share.
Certainly. This year, actually, we do have an employee wellness program. Every week, we're providing updates and communication and different wellness opportunities to all of our employees. There was, I just don't recall the date, but a couple of weeks ago during what we call our Green Day on Wednesday, there was a session specific to employee wellness for those employees to attend. We also provide Thursday, it was during the summer, during the day, but now that school is in session, right after school, wellness opportunities for all of our employees as well. And then the other thing to remember too, we do have other leave type benefits that staff are encouraged to contact human resources regarding, to include the Family First Response Coronavirus Act. That's good through December 31st.
Thank you. That's what I was wanting to make sure, is that because our staff are struggling also with the same level of emotion that our families are. So I'm glad to hear that we're also focused on them and offering them opportunities to meet their needs as they go through this unsettled times. Board members, any other comments, questions?
Yes.
Is that you, Ms. Whaley?
Yes, Ms. Lambert.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that we got this right. So October 1st is when we're hoping to get people nailed into what their choice is. Did I hear that right?
We would certainly like, if our trend is in the right direction, to say to folks, this is the trend, so we're going to be planning for, say face-to-face or traditional model, excuse me, and then unless the numbers trend in the wrong direction, we want to be able to have people start preparing, childcare and all that type of stuff. So yes, we're definitely looking to try to tell them that again, because we'd have 2 weeks there after that, Ms. Whaley. So we'd have the 8th and the 15th, as Ms. Lambert asked earlier. But the first was very important right now, because if we can show the trend of our PCR going in the right direction and our cases going in the right direction, that would be exceptionally helpful for us to then, parents can make some decisions, staff and all that type of stuff. We're still going to work.
First, we say this is kind of where we're going on the 19th. That gives you all time to take those selections. Hopefully you get the selections within a couple of days of what they want. That gives you a couple weeks to see how many in-person teachers you need, how many virtual teachers you need, shuffle them into their new classrooms, or those that are going to get new classrooms, but basically know who's going to be on track A and who's going to be on track B. So it gives you about 2 weeks to figure all of that out, right?
Well, Ms. Whaley, Ms. Lambert, members of the board, if the trend would be in the direction, we might be then looking at traditional models. So you just mentioned A and B. We're ready for that, and that's what Justin mentioned earlier. We'll be plugging students in once we have their data. And we are planning to do that early next week to get to the families, do a robocall, possibly even this weekend, to just say, hey, we need you to reach out and make sure that you're confirming your decision. and then follow up for the ones that are missing. But we're running two scenarios there. We're running the AB hybrid, and then we're also going to be running the potential for the traditional model. Now, one thing Ms. Lambert mentioned earlier is, with 6,000 students in the traditional model currently until semester, they would then be taken out, and we would have only those many kids to go back into the classroom and to deal with our, all the mitigating circumstances of hand washing and hand sanitizer and multiple cleanings and ventilation and wearing the masks. So again, that's something to consider too. But we would be running both scenarios. But on the first, if it stayed a positive trend, then we could certainly be looking at potentially a traditional model as well as the hybrid. And then of course,
but either way, if you have people in a traditional, if you've already got them in their traditional classrooms, they would just, but it looks like it's going to be a hybrid. You just split that traditional classroom in half.
Potentially, that is the potential scenario. Yes.
Okay.
As Justin said, we can run
Correct.
both. We can
Correct.
go ahead, Justin. Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, just to add to that, you are correct, Mrs. Whaley. Once we identify and just confirm the distance learning only students for the semester, we're going to staff accordingly based on that. Then with the students who are returning on October 19th and the staff returning, then we will be able to determine the class size. But at that point in time, on October 19th, if I have 24 kids and we're traditional, the intent is that if something were to occur a month later and we have to pull back a little bit and go hybrid, your 24 kids, you'll have 12 and 12 or 13, 11. I mean, it's not always going to be 50, right, but it's going to be darn close. And then when we go back again in green, you get them back in. So to really limit the amount of times staff have to change with their students and students have to change with their staff, the probably the only time that it's going to be a major factor or a factor will be transitioning to second quarter, because again, as Dr. Stan stated, we've committed to providing that distance learning only model for the rest of the school year. If we didn't have that at all and everybody's coming back October 19th, you're assigned your same kids you're assigned now, but we do have that and we are offering that for the rest of the year, and that just changes or will have some impact on that staffing, student assigned teacher or students assigned to the teachers starting second quarter.
And correct me if I'm wrong, fall break is October 12th. Is that right?
Yes. 12th through the 15th.
So
and end of the first quarter is October 9th, the end of the grading period.
Okay. So October 1st, we're going to start trying to figure out who we are basically just writing off into virtual land, and then start putting the other people into a class, into their classes.
We'll be starting before October 1st with that, Ms. Whaley. We'll actually be starting next Monday.
Okay. And then
I don't know if I misunderstood your question, Nikki, or Mrs. Whaley. Those who are going to remain distance learning, if they have to transition to a teacher, that would take place October 19th also.
Okay. I just understand the people that are going to be virtual to the end of the semester, they're kind of like that. They're going to be virtual to the end of the semester. You were going to be putting the rest of the people in the class. Mm-hmm. So that's going to happen. That's going to start happening. You said something like next week. You're going to get confirmation after the first with families in terms of checking in with them one more time, saying, hey, this is where the trend's looking. Is that still what you plan to do? And then we go on fall break. My question is, and then you would come back to whatever model we chose, whether that's hybrid or full traditional, on the 19th. My question is, when do the teachers get to prepare their classrooms for that scenario? If they're gone for fall break for a week, when is the on-contract hours available for them to prepare their classrooms? Is that going to happen like the 8th and the 9th?
Go ahead, Justin.
You are correct. The Staffing and Instruction Committee and I think the Operations Committee simultaneously recommended that teachers have a 2-day transition. It's pretty consistent, I think, with neighboring school districts as well. And that would be, assuming this is approved, Thursday, October 8th and Friday, October 9th.
So in that scenario, kids would go on break early then, right? Because the idea is that the teachers are going to be not available, correct?
I mean, Ms. Moore can add to this, but I know Academic Services is preparing for some self-paced independent work for both the 8th and the 9th for students.
So no live instruction of any kind will happen on the 8th or the 9th.
Correct.
And kids will have homework that they're supposed to do right before fall break.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll just keep my parent cap to myself and how likely that they'll do that homework. But okay, so they'll have those 2 days before spring or fall break to prepare for whatever the 19th is going to look like.
Yep. I suppose if somebody wanted to come in maybe a little bit more, they have that opportunity, just like sometimes teachers come right in the summer before they come in. But the intent is to give them 2 full days during their contract calendar to prepare the classroom, to receive professional learning.
Yep. Training on safety protocols. Yep.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out the turnaround time, if it looked like all of that stuff could be done in that 2-week turnaround time. So thank you for sharing that.
Ms. Mora, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, President Lambert. I just wanted to mention that we have a team working on those 2 days of lessons. We are designing engaging lessons. I don't want them to be just homework or tasks that we're asking our students to complete. The team's doing some really exciting stuff, some self-paced things that the students can walk through, projects, some more engaging type activities, because we know it's 2 days before fall break. We want to keep them as engaged as possible. So I'm extremely proud of our team for working on that. And so I know Paula McWhorter and the coaches are designing some very fun lessons for the kids for those 2 days.
Thank you. Dr. Stanton, the one thing that I've noticed, and we've been putting out information, you've been reaching out, but there still is a lot of misunderstanding of what is going on, from the fact that we have no plan to the fact that we don't talk to anybody. Have you thought in your communication plan would be the best way to almost, I want to put it in the frame of a teacher conference, or have the principal do a Zoom meeting or some kind of meeting with parents to kind of explain what is going on and to be able to answer those questions? Because we can read these documents and then somebody thinks of a question. Well, who do they ask? How do they get clarity on that?
Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience, and Dr. Bailey, you can step in as well. Yeah, as you know from your years of experience, the localized person reaching out and having that communication with their parents is the best way to do it. And so I know that part of the communication plan will be Ms. Horton and the CAPE team putting out our regular information, but that personal, localized school level is where they would be planning and then doing the work. In fact, we talked today about in the contact in the follow-up, we really need the local school person to help with that, because that's the school that they'd be attending. So as much as we can localize that communication, we will certainly still use all of our social medias and our emails and our phone calls and the robocalls and all that type of stuff. But if we can get to the local level where somebody can, it's their child, I get it, they want to know the personal experience, that would be at the localized level. Dr. Bailey, anything you want to add to that?
No, thank you, President Lambert, members of the board. After tonight's meeting, we are going to meet with administrators tomorrow based on your recommendations, and they are very antsy to get going. They've started their planning. You're exactly right, President Lambert. It is the local level, hearing from the principal, hearing from the teachers, and I must commend the teachers. The number of responses that we received is because teachers were really corresponding with families to actually get their responses on what model that was their preference. I commend them. I mean, for us to get the percentage that we have right now is unbelievable. I remember being asked last board meeting what I would like is to see as a percentage surveys coming in, and I stated 100%. Well, you know what, we got almost 100% in some of our schools, so in some of them actually went over 100%, but we'll clear that up. So it really is due to those teachers responding and working with the family. So it will be that personal touch from both the principal, from the administrators, as well as the teachers once we get this plan going, because I know parents will want to know what is going to actually happen even before the break. So we're looking forward to actually communicating in much more of a personal manner rather than just the Friday afternoon or 5 o'clock, communiques that we get, which is exceptional from CAPE and some of the videos that have gone out, but it's that personal touch from their classroom teacher or from their administrator.
Okay. So Dr. Stanton, I was looking for, when did we initially put out our return to learn plan? Was that towards the end of the last school year? Is that around April, May?
Ms. Tucker, can you help with that one? When was the original return to learn?
I believe it was at the July 9th board meeting.
Oh, my, how life has changed. And in that, that return to learn, I think that even for myself, you had laid out a plan and we gave you, rightly so, the authority to be able to direct the ship and make changes as we needed. But it was just from virtual to coming back full face. Nobody, at least not me, had any idea that this pandemic would run this course. I've never lived through a pandemic. My parents could tell me stories, but I've never lived through it. So I don't have that experience. So as we update our plan, it strictly was virtual to coming back face to face. So when we're updating the plan, we're putting in this flexibility of hybrid and the green model of going back to in person, correct? Mm-hmm. And with the flexibility that depending on how the numbers and the metrics go and the health of our community goes, we can quickly adapt to however that needs to be adapted to, either moving forward or having to step back and do that. I know that's uncomfortable and not knowing the feeling, but I don't know how else we can do this. Being part of other school districts and talking to other folks, I'm proud that we're sticking to science and data to be making this decision and taking input from our families, not just from a few, but from looking at being able to do that survey. I was kind of amazed that 40% want to come back. I didn't know that it would be that high. So people are getting to that point in their life where they're finding their footing as we go through this. So in making our motion or making as part of this motion, we're adapting our plan that is going to include this flexibility of hybrid and going back to green. And is it going to contain all the criteria, or is it just going to be pretty much what you just showed us, or it's an overview? It doesn't have that in depth of like the operations committee and things like that. And if it's not going to be in that plan, can this document that you created showing the operations work and a sample day in the life of Johnny in 5th grade, can that be accessible to the public on our website so they can have the time to really study it and look at it and understand better because it's those things of where are they taking the temperatures, what is going to happen if this, who's taking care of what, how did we address the air, all that level of detail. I was so, I hate to use the word impressed, but I was impressed at the level of detail that the conversations went in addressing all of that to help provide some assurances that we tried to look at absolutely everything before bringing everybody back on a campus and trying to mitigate exposure and what we're trying to do. So there was a question in there somewhere, but I got it.
I think I got it. I think the answer is, Ms. Lambert, that we can take the operational subcommittee recommendations, refine them, because I think you saw a couple things in there that needed the refinement. Then also take the hybrid weekly example, we can do two things. We can also not only put it on our website, but when we, in the reopening plan, we can actually create the hyperlink, obviously online, that could have, if you'd like to look at the detail, the operational subcommittees recommendations are here, click. You know, we can do that online. So we could put both those with the hybrid a fifth grader example, you know, so we can do that. So the answer is yes. But the board, obviously, after whatever the board decides, we could easily do that, of course.
Can we also have some printed copies at a school? So if a parent doesn't have the accessibility to get on the website, that they can come to the school and pick up a hard copy. And, you know, I'm one of those folks. I know computers were created to reduce paperwork, but it seems to add more. But I like to look at something and be able to highlight and then go back and reflect on it instead of just reading it on a screen. So if we can have paper copies.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Board members? Yes, Ms. Whaley.
Hi. This is obviously a really hard, question for you. So I'm trying really hard. I know what I feel comfortable. I am very uneasy with the hybrid option, but I do know that there are people that want it. I know that the health officials are saying that there's moderate risk. You could do this. I mean, they're not saying they're not recommending that you go to hybrid. They're just saying you could go to hybrid when this is the scenario with moderate risk. I just want to be clear that none of the CDC is saying once we hit these benchmarks, you should absolutely go to hybrid. It's more like now, if you wanted to do hybrid, this would be an appropriate time to do it. So I want to say that I'm still trying to grapple with that, because just because we can doesn't mean that it's without risk, and are we willing to take that risk? So one of the questions I still have that to help me make this decision is I recognize and I appreciate that parents are going to make choices around how much risk they're willing to go. Just like Ms. Lambert mentioned, they may come and to school and they're willing to take that risk, but every other day of the week they are at their home, not going out, not doing anything, because the only measured risk they're willing to take is that couple days at school. There's other people that are, like you said, are going to go to hybrid, and then they're going to go home and they're going to go to the park and they're going to go tubing and they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And we can't control that. But the parents are taking that measured risk. My concern is with our teachers and staff that don't get that choice unless they have an accommodation. And I'm really concerned about that, because we saw in John Jacobs, we saw in Queen Creek, we saw in these other districts that when we didn't give teachers a choice, they wouldn't be forced to show up. And we saw a recent report that Justin put out across the state that we're seeing people resign. We're seeing people not come to that first day of class that's supposed to be reopened in hundreds. And I don't want to be in a situation where we move forward with the plan and then find out that people aren't going to show up, and they may not make that choice until the last minute. And I think that our teachers are very duty bound. They want to do what's right for kids. They're often putting their kids before themselves, before their sleep, before their health, before anything else. So I don't think it's because a bunch of teachers don't care about their kids that they want to stay home. My question that I'm getting to is, if a teacher does not have an accommodation and they really do not feel comfortable being in a classroom, are we going to be taking action against their credential for abandoning contract?
Did you ask, I think I heard the question correctly. Did you ask what happens if a teacher abandons their contract?
No, well, the way I phrased it was, if a teacher, we're giving families the choice to take that risk, but we're not really giving our teachers the chance to take that risk or not. We're saying you have a contract, you need to show up for school unless you have an accommodation. If a teacher just says, you know what, I can't, I don't feel comfortable, I didn't qualify to get an accommodation, they want me to report and I just can't do it. Are we and they they do what we saw in John Combs and some other districts, and they just don't show up for that first day of school, or they abandon their contract because they don't want to be forced back into the classroom. Is Washington going to follow tradition and take action against credentials?
A couple ways to respond to that. To begin with, if an individual, and this has occurred already, if a teacher wishes to resign, actually really for many reasons, including potential COVID and examples as you indicated, the message is we need to find a suitable replacement for you. You know,
in this environment, though, we don't have suitable replacements. We don't. So the likelihood of them being able to get out of their contract because we're able to find a suitable replacement is very unlikely. So the question still remains: are we going to be going after people's credentials if they do not show up?
We actually don't. We would follow if somebody abandons their contract. We would follow state statute and our policy, and that includes notifying the Department of Ed / Board of Education. They're the ones that actually deals with any credentials, if at all. But we would do that. I would be particularly concerned if somebody doesn't show on Monday, October 19th, and has made no contact with human resources or their school administrator, and because we will have a class of 24 kids and no opportunity to even seek a substitute, I would have some strong concerns about that.
Right, but I imagine it being more like the week before they're saying I'm not ready, and we aren't able to find somebody to replace them. So it sounds like we would follow what we've done in the past in those situations.
There's also circumstances where individuals may qualify for the FERCRA or FMLA. So I think it's also going to be depending on the situation. If somebody just, I don't want to come back just because, you know, that's a little different than, hey, I have a medical condition that may not be a disability under ADA, you know, I'm having surgery or something like that, may not qualify for disability, but they're qualified for the Family Medical Leave Act. I would encourage that staff member to contact HR. Actually, regardless of this, even the examples you shared, I would encourage them to contact Human Resources immediately, depending on how the what board action is taken tonight.
Okay, so the encouragement would be, don't feel like you have no choices. Reach out to HR and talk through your options before you make a decision to not follow through with your contract. To reach out to see if there's other options for you and don't just assume that there's not.
I think you should always inquire, particularly in 2020, what we're dealing with now. It is important also that we have, you know, an adult in that classroom on October 19th as well, and have those students receive education as well. So I go reiterate, I'm concerned about the person who just doesn't show up on Monday, October 19th, particularly with no notice.
No, I don't want that either, but I don't want the person that gave notice but doesn't have a good enough reason or find any way, you know, to get an approval to stay home. I don't want them to feel like they have to choose between their credential or what's best for their family.
And ultimately, the governing board is who approves a resignation or whether it's a job abandonment.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And that also goes, Justin, with folks that don't want to be virtual anymore, because I've had many discussions with staff that they don't want to do virtual anymore and they're uncomfortable with it. They don't like it. And if they have to stay virtual, then they would make that life-changing decision, just as if the person who is fearful of this pandemic. Right. So that could go both ways. I mean, that's the issue. It's
good point.
You know, so people are feeling pulled both ways. So,
Mrs. Lambert?
Yes.
So just to piggyback a little bit on that, and I thought maybe we need to have a future agenda item to discuss. I mean, I hate to go through every abandonment, but maybe we need to come up with we need to have a future agenda item to talk about under these unique circumstances. Because I also agree with, we don't want to under these circumstances, we don't want to penalize anybody if they leave. anybody's thoughts on that? I mean, is that a good idea? We should.
I think that's something, go ahead and bring that up at the end of our agenda as
Great.
a future agenda item, and we can, we'll make a note of it, make sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Adams.
All right. I move that the governing board accept the revision to the WESD reopening school plan for the 2020-2021 school year and authorize the superintendent to modify, alter, or change the plan as needed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second Mrs. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Yannicki. I think I'd like to do a roll call vote, and I'm under the assumption that there may be people who would like to explain their vote, so that would be an opportunity to do that. Ms. Tucker?
Thank you. Governing Board President, Ms. Lambert, how do you vote?
I will vote yes, and to explain my vote is that I think this is a good plan for uncertain times. There's going to be changes, and I just ask our families, our staff, to be patient and to know that we are doing the best that we can, and we're going to do the best that we can, and that they should always feel free to be able to come to administration and express concerns and have that discussed. Thank you.
Mr. Adams, how do you vote?
I'd like to explain my vote real quick. I will vote aye, and I'll explain it. I want to take this opportunity to, again, thank staff and everybody involved. I want to echo Ms. Lambert's statements in regards to utilizing all the resources we have. Oh God, I have to write one other thing. Just want to say thank you to everybody. This is a moving target. Thank you.
Mr. Yannicki, how do you vote?
I'll explain my vote too. I want to thank my colleagues for a robust discussion about this, and certainly I never dreamed I'd have such a consequential position. I mean, I always thought this position was important, but it's especially important right now with the pandemic. And I want to thank those parents and community members who've reached out to me and sent emails. And I know I can't make them all happy, but I'm pleased with this plan, and I'm proud of what we're trying to accomplish, and I vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Herrera?
I vote yes.
And Ms. Whaley?
I'll go ahead and explain my vote. You know, I think that the administration did a tremendous job with this. I know that there's so much work that went into it. I know that people have passionate views on all sides of this, and I appreciate all of that. At the end of the day, I have to represent the community and do what I think is best, and I just feel like there's too many unknowns to safely open in a hybrid model. I just think that we can, but it doesn't mean that we should. And so for that reason, I will vote nay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead, Ms. Tucker. I stepped on you.
The vote is 4-1 and it passes.
Thank you. And I do want to just take this moment to thank our board members for this thoughtful conversation, and it is emotional, and we are a fair representation of our community because it is as intense to us and as important to us as it is to our families, our students, their families, and to our staff. I thank you very much for this exchange. I thank the administration for the work that you have done and will be doing, because goodness knows this is not over. And we're just going to have to keep in our prayers all the best for the United States as we continue to deal with this pandemic. We're on to Before I ask for future future agenda items or reports, I neglected to thank our donors for the public gifts and donations. So I would like to take this moment to thank Donors Choose for their donation in Mountain Sky, Helix Education, Arizona Backpacks for Kids, the Social Services Department. I'm sure they will be put well to good use. Elena Rivera from at Mountain View to help purchase sensory related materials for students. Thank you so much for supporting our students in our schools. And now I'll move on to request for future reports and agenda items.
Ms. Lambert.
Oops.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Lambert.
Let me take Mr. Adams first. That's the first voice I heard. I'm sorry. Mr. Adams, go ahead.
I'd like to have a discussion in regards to those individuals that wish to terminate with the district, and how in regards to making sure they're not penalized. I hope I'm wording that properly. Shannon, do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes, Mr. Adams, and I'll follow up for detail. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Herrera, is that your voice I heard?
Yeah, I just was going to mention that on your the Donors Choose the backpacks, I think 50 of them went to Sunset Elementary. So I just want to mention that they went to Deb Naka at Sunset Elementary for use in the elementary school kids. So and then also I wanted to have if the bond thing was coming up. I know Kathy said that was going to be ready next month. So hopefully that'll be ready. Also because the quarter's ending, I want to get an update on the bond sale as well, the next section of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And did you mean Sunset or Sunburst?
Sorry, Sunburst. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for making the connection.
Yeah,
there's two stallions. There's two cougars. There's you know what? That's another thing too. Can we talk about the mascots? I mean, there's four stallions, two cougers, two wolves.
Okay. Well, that's not in our purview, so we'll just deal with that.
Right.
All right, then that brings us to the end of the meeting. If I could have a motion for adjournment.
So
moved. Beat you, Bill.
Nikki won that battle. That was impressive.
Goodness. All right, Miss
No,
Whaley.
this is seniority, and I got it. Thank you.
Is there? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm giving it to Miss Whaley. Is there a second?
Whoa.
No second. We're going to continue. I'll second the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? Then I call this meeting to adjourn at 9:28. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Good job, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.